Prime Minister Narendra Modi. We are now learning that the bill for One Nation, One Poll will be introduced in Parliament next week, and subsequently it will be referred to a joint parliamentary committee. Now, there is a sound economic rationale for why India should have one election. Every 6 months in this country, you have an assembly election or you have a general election. The point is, there is massive costs to the exchequer. This is unsaid, both man-hour costs and total costs that go into holding these elections. So, it'll be a massive cost saving to the exchequer. In fact, the last election, the 2024 election, by some unofficial estimates, was to the tune of 5,000 crore rupees. We could save all of that if instead of having multiple elections in a year, you have just one election. That's the contention of the ruling party, the BJP. The opposition, though, says this is undemocratic, this is anti-federal. At the end of the day, we are a federal polity. There are 29 states. Each state has its own issues, has its own politics, has its own dynamics, and therefore the people of each of these states have a right to choose who they want as their representatives, both at the local level and at the national level, independent of each other. That's the case against One Nation, One Election. But of course, there is the case to be made as well that from 1952, when we had our first general election, all the way up to 1967, we had for 15 years One Nation, One Election. Simultaneous elections both for the Lok Sabha and for state assemblies. So if we could do it in the first years after independence, why can't we do it 70 years on? Has the time come for One Nation, One Election?
तो इसीलिए प्रधानमंत्री जी चाहते हैं वन नेशन वन इलेक्शन हो। हम लोग इसको पूरा समर्थन करता हूं।
इट विल वर्क एज ए गेम चेंजर। कम से कम 1 से 1.5% जो है ऑटोमेटिकली इस देश की जीडीपी बढ़ जाएगी।
हम बिल आने का इंतजार करेंगे कि किस तरीके से वन नेशन वन इलेक्शन लागू होगा। तो एक लंबी प्रक्रिया है।
ये बहानेबाजी है कि आप कह रहे हैं कि एक साथ चुनाव कराने से खर्चे कम आएंगे। क्या वोटर्स की संख्या कम हो जाएगी एक साथ चुनाव कराने से? क्या ईवीएम की संख्या कम हो जाएगी?
All right, so is India ready for One Nation, One Poll? Many arguments and two different sides to this debate. One saying that yes, India is ready. There is an economic rationale, there's a political rationale, there's a national security rationale, and one side saying no, India is not ready, principally saying that in a federal polity like ours, a One Nation, One Poll would be anti-federal. RP Singh, national spokesperson of the BJP, joining us. Mohan Kumar Mangalam, spokesperson of the Congress Party. Tariq Khan, spokesperson of the Samajwadi Party, and will also be joined in a moment by Professor Sanjay Kumar, co-founder with CSDS and one of India's foremost psephologists. Mohan Kumar Mangalam, let me start with you. Let's start with the economic rationale. And these are numbers. In 1999, more than 20 years ago, 25 years ago, the cost of conducting the general election in 1999 was 947 crores at an electorate of about 61 crores. 5 years later, in 2004, when the UPA came to power, for the very first time, officially, the figures went in excess of 1,000 crores to conduct the general election at an electorate of 67 crores. 10 years later, in 2014, when Mr. Modi came to power, the cost was 3,870 crores at 83 crore electorate. And in 2024, the last general election, it was over 5,000 crores with a 97 crore electorate. There is a sound economic rationale for why we should have just one nation, one election.
Zakka, I mean, taking the denominator as the electorate isn't particularly accurate because you do have inflation. Every year expenses go up. And, frankly, the expenses for Parliament as listed in the report that was released is less than 0.02% of the union budget. state elections come out of the state budget, and I think the ratio is likely the same. And costs aside, economic rationale aside, honestly, first of all, I just have to say this because I think this is yet again we're debating one nation, one election when we know that the two-thirds constitutional majority or majority in parliament that's required to pass the constitutional amendment is not existing for the government. This is yet another diversion, given all the issues that need to be talked about in electoral reform, frankly. This is one electoral reform that is neither feasible nor desirable. What is going to happen to the parties that are going to election in, let's say, another couple of years? They're going to only stand, like, let's say my state goes in 26. Is it only going to have a term of 3 years? So if one nation, one election kickstarts in 29, how is that fair? And how is that, even when you're talking about an election where you have a national election and a state election at the same time, it is extremely unfair to the smaller regional parties in those states that really find they've lost their voice. Many of the local issues disappear in an election when both are happening simultaneously. So this is not only anti-federal, it's also anti-democratic. Many of the reasons that were given in the panel were facetious. They said welfare schemes would be stopped. Of course, it's not stopped. In fact, even critical disbursements happen during elections if the election commission allows it. And the oldest democracy in the world, if you want to benchmark against them, they have separate elections as well. They have federal and state elections happening at different times. So where is this great sort of realization that's come into the government that this is the sort of master stroke that will change our electoral
respond
fortunes?
to that. One nation, one election is an impractical idea. It's an anti-federal idea. It's anti-regional parties. And this whole thing about costs, it's only 0.2% of the entire union budget of the government of India to conduct elections. Why are you so worried? Why are you so worried about costs? RP Singh.
Zakka, sorry, my apologies. Zakka, it means till 1967, what used to happen was wrong. 52 to 67, it happened in the country. All elections during that period. There was one election, whether assembly or the parliament. It's only because of the Congress party they started dissolving the state assemblies at the whims and fancies. Probably more than 90 state assemblies were dissolved by them during the Nehru and Indira Gandhi and Rajiv Gandhi regime. So thereafter, the complete cycle was broken. But the issue is other than that. The issue is they are just now Mr. Kumar Mangalam was challenging the intelligence of the voter. He says smaller parties won't get a chance. I mean, BJP used to win elections in the same polling booth where there's a separate machine for the assembly election and separate machine for the parliament election. People used to vote for Biju Janata Dal in assembly election, and whereas they used to vote for other parties in the parliament election. So was the case with Andhra Pradesh also. So how do you think, I mean, that voters can't distinguish or find a difference between the local parties and the national parties, and they can't distinguish into the two? Thirdly, what is the problem is that the progress of the work, the administration which works, that gets stalled. I mean, if there is some scheme which is on, you have to stall that. You complete work progress or every government administrative works which are on, they are halted because of the elections. And every now and then, and it's not the budget which you are just saying that was there for the election. I mean, the money which is spent is huge. I mean, all political parties spend huge money, and then that money goes, I mean, waste. I mean, instead of that, put that money to better use.
Okay.
It's not that the government money only. It's not the government money.
No, but the argument that the opposition is saying is, if you want to clean up politics, if you want to clean up electoral politics, why is there no bar on political parties spending for elections? There are bars on individual candidates. I don't know the exact amount. Professor Sanjay Kumar will know the exact amount for MP election and for MLA election. But there is no bar on political parties from spending. And if you need to clean up electoral politics, that should be your starting point, not one nation, one poll. But anyway, be that as it may, let me ask.
Can I make a small point?
Yeah.
There's a welcome suggestion, and let this be handled by election commission. That's very welcome. Let election commission take a call on it.
Mohan wants to make a clarification. Then I want to go to Tariq Khan after that. Yeah, Tariq Khan and Professor Kumar.
Just one small clarification. The example of BJD does not hold true because BJD ruled that state, was a dominant party. I am referring to smaller parties. Like, for example, in my state, there is Patali Makkal Kachi, there is Vidri Sittigal, there is Nam Tamilar. All these parties rarely participate to a large extent in parliament. They do participate, but they're, sort of almost sideshows in a Lok Sabha election. But in a state election, they are major factors, because most of their focus is local in the state, and that's what I mean when I say smaller parties actually get marginalized.
Okay, so let me ask Tariq Khan. Tariq Khan, so again, leave aside the high election costs, leave aside, it cost 5,000 crores to conduct the last general election. There is also, because of election after election, every 6 months we have an election, the discourse, the political discourse in the country becomes extremely polarizing. There are hate speeches that are made by members of different political parties. Also, the point that Mr. Singh was making about, there are project delays that happen, investment flows become more stable if you have, and people know that there is a definitive timeline for every state assembly and for every parliament. Then people know once in 5 years you've had an election, the next 5 years your job is to govern, your job is to show the people that you can deliver, and if you don't, then vote those parties out. But here, every 6 months, because you have an election, the focus of those who have been elected to govern is also more on winning the next election rather than, actually governing. So that problem will get sorted, Tariq Khan, if we have just one election in 5 years.
I may agree with you, but slogans like "batenge katenge" would not be there. Means if I agree with you, what you are saying, that these agenda of polarization and divisive politics will not be there. Means if you are saying that they will not bring all these agenda to the table, I'll agree with you. But unfortunately, the ultimate objective of Bharatiya Janata Party is to divide. Now, Kovind said there would be a difference of 1.5% on the economy. I'm amazed. It will make difference on the growth rate or overall size of the GDP. Means I just need an economist to explain these two things. I'm very amazed. I want to know. I'm so excited that how it's going to. Means at the rate of 1.5%. Means what he's saying. He has to explain it on the floor of the table or in the house or somewhere else or anywhere else. Or BJP spokesperson should explain this, that 1.5% to a size of almost $4 trillion economy, India, which is about to become a $5 trillion economy, means you're saying that it will impact 1.5% or it will impact on at the rate of or whole size of the economy. Means what he's talking about. Means somebody please, we all need economists to explain these things. Now, simple point is this, that you can do that. You can do that. Go ahead. There would be required a lots of amendment. We have amendment, but we don't know what exactly they are putting on the table. What would be the means? I'm giving a proposal to Bharatiya Janata Party. Let's have one nation, one election. Dissolve the assemblies of BJP. First have a trial basis work. Dissolve the assemblies where NDA is ruling. Had a one nation, one election. That would be a very good option.
वो कैसा suggestion है? मतलब there is a whole Kovind committee report which has given out a detailed timeline. सुनिए, बात तो सुनिए, एक second.
Charities should be beginning from your
Tariq
home.
Khan, there is a whole detailed Kovind committee report. Now you could make the case. I'm not arguing against it. You could make the case, for example, in Uttar Pradesh, next election is in 2027. So after that, if you're going to have one nation, one poll in 2029, then how do you convince political parties in Uttar Pradesh कि 2027 का जो चुनाव है, it's only for a term of 2 years, because 2 साल के बाद तो one nation, one poll है. There you can make a case. I don't have a quibble with that. वो आपका argument है, genuine argument हो सकता है. But the point is to say कि मतलब 17 प्रदेश हैं जहाँ पे एनडीए का है, उसको पहले डिसॉल्व कर दो, एंड देन बाकी जो 10 प्रदेश हैं या 12 प्रदेश हैं जहाँ के नॉन एनडीए हैं, वहाँ पे बाद में करेंगे. See, that's not going to fly. The point is, you may have some genuine sort of grievances with the method that's been suggested by Mr. Kovind's panel. By all means, debate it in Parliament when the bill comes. But to say ki, dissolve all the NDA rule states and then don't dissolve all the non-NDA rule states, uska kya matlab hai? There's no meaning to it.
For me, mandate of the people is more important than money. If you want if you want mandate of the people, money will spend. And India is capable of spending money. Why you are shying away? We should spend money on election to have a free and fair election. So it's not like that that we'll say these type means this amount of and exactly is not clear that how much money is going to be saved. According to ex-CEC Quraishi ji, he said not more than 4,000 crore rupees could be saved. Means it's not a big amount.
Okay, so let me ask Professor Sanjay Kumar. You know, the economic cost, we've already debated, you know, the forcing of the government machinery to shift focus, particularly security forces, paramilitary forces, to shift their focus from what should be security duty to election duty. That's a election security duty. That, of course, is one part of it. There's also millions of man hours. Forget about the economic cost. There's man hour cost, which, of course, you can't quantify or you can't put that to the election budget. Policy paralysis. You heard Mr. Singh say that, you know, once the model code of conduct comes, then technically no government scheme or no government given this thing can be announced during the period of the model code. No significant policy can be announced, neither can it be executed. So the point is, there is an argument to be made other than even the economic rationale. That's one part of it. There is also a policy argument to be made that every 6 months, if you have model code of conduct from one state to the next, then you cannot implement a nationwide policy for the period that model code is in existence.
No, Zakka, the model code of conduct is implemented or comes into force only in the state which goes to poll. So suppose UP goes to poll, the model code of conduct will be implemented in UP. It will have no relevance in Bihar or in Madhya Pradesh. The government is elected for full 5 years, and the model code of conduct comes into play only for maybe 35 days, at the most 2 months. The government has 60 months to work for the people of this country, for the people of the state. But you can't take, the bahana of like model code of conduct has come into play for the last 2 months and we were not able to do the work. Suppose elections are held simultaneously for assembly and the Lok Sabha elections, and if they are being held separately as of now, so twice a state goes to poll, once for assembly election and once for the Lok Sabha election. Even if it falls in the cycle of 5 years, 2 months, 4 months goes for model code of conduct. Still government has enough time to work. So I personally don't buy this argument that there is always a model code of conduct which comes into play, which hampers government's developmental work. Government has all the time to do the developmental work. Model code of conduct is for a very, 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 very limited time.
No, the argument, for example, I think recently there was this scheme that was introduced for health insurance for senior citizens. Now, at that time, if I'm not mistaken, I think Haryana and Kashmir and other states were going to polls. So it could not be extended to those states. It could only be extended to those states once the election process got completed there. Is that something that you buy?
No, absolutely. If there is a central government scheme which has been implemented,
yes,
which has been announced, and if a state goes to poll, that scheme will not be implemented in the state till the state elections are over. But I don't think the heaven will fall if suppose central government announce a program tomorrow and say next morning the election commission also announced the schedule for Delhi assembly election. If the scheme is not implemented in Delhi for the next 40 days, 45 days, the heaven will not fall. The scheme was not there for the last 5 years.
What about the argument, before I go back to the political spokespersons, what about the argument that from 1952, the first general election, till 1967, when we had the first big defeat to the Congress party, particularly in states, in big states, we had simultaneous elections for those first 15 years. So if you could do it in the first years after independence, surely we can do it 70 years after independence or 75 years after independence.
If the state cycle falls naturally in the cycle of a national election, nobody is saying that you don't hold elections simultaneously. But forcing all the states to hold elections simultaneously, that there is a difference. So when we are talking about 67, 72 and 57, states cycle of election were falling naturally in the national cycle of election. If it happens now, hold elections for 10, 12, 15 states along with the Lok Sabha elections. There's no harm in that. there's no point in holding elections months after months. So we should try and work in the model of holding elections of as many states as possible along with the Lok Sabha election, not forcing everyone, all the states mechanically to hold elections along with the Lok Sabha election.
So right
It is
now, the
impractical.
only two
It is
big
impractical.
states which have simultaneous elections for their assembly along with the Lok Sabha are Odisha and Andhra Pradesh. I think only two, at least amongst the big states. I'm not sure about the smaller states. But anyway, Mr. Singh, you know, the point that Professor Sanjay Kumar also made, ultimately, whether it is BJP ruled or non-BJP ruled, for example, UP goes to polls in 2027. How can you convince your own, you know, leaders and party members in UP that that election will only be for a 2-year term? Or Bengal goes to polls in 2026, Tamil Nadu goes to polls in 2026. That particular election will only be for a 3-year term. Why would any political party want to contest such an election?
Zakka, the parameter will be the same for each and every political party, not only for BJP or TMC or Congress party. It will be the same parameter for all the parties. But Professor, it's not only the parliament election or the assembly election. It's the panchayat election. It's the civic bodies election. So all put together comes to something like 6 months, which is almost 10% of the working time. And then 10% is no less. And then if that energy is diverted toward progress of the nation, that will obviously increase the GDP of the country also and the state also. So it's not just merely 40 days or 2 months. When every election put together for a state, all elections, different elections put together, cost a lot of time and also a lot of resources also. But coming to the issue of how will this happen, that the report has to still come to the parliament and let the parliament discuss. And it will be, again, I reiterate, the parameters will be the same for all parties or all states put together.
No, so as per the former President Kovind committee report, so assemblies whose term ends between 2024 and 2029, like Uttar Pradesh in 2027, Punjab in 2027, if you have, for example, Tamil Nadu or Bengal in 2026, that election, that mid-year election will be for a truncated term. And then in 2029, you will have one nation, one poll across for all 29 states and all and the general election for the Lok Sabha in 2029. And then after that, it's a 5-year term. Now, again, the question that was asked by some of the opposition folks is, what if, for example, for some reason, a government falls, right? A government loses the confidence of the assembly and the government falls. Then what will you do for the remainder of the term? There will be no government in place for the next 2.5 years?
Well, Zakka, I have not gone through the report myself and neither I have the access to the report, but there will be some solution to this also, and then probably there will be some good viable solution to this. But the concern is, again, whatever will be implemented for all parties, all states with the same parameter. It won't be that some BJP will get benefit or TMC will not get benefit or some other NDA alliance partner will get benefit or the so-called India alliance, whatever left, will get benefit or not. So let's this be put on table and let's just be discussed. Why in haste? But why to reject it without even reading the report or without even understanding the report? So it will be good that let the parliamentarians discuss this and then make your opinion.
So Mohan Kumar Mangalam, again, we've made I gave the arguments for the economic rationale. The arguments have been made about this whole model code of conduct, not just for general elections or state assembly, but even local elections, impeding what Mr. Singh calls, development or, policy paralysis and so on and so forth. But be that, all there as those respective arguments, the fundamental point is also that for 15 years under the Congress rule, there were simultaneous elections. Nobody said Pandit Nehru is anti-federal because he had simultaneous elections. In fact, in 1983, the very first time the idea of one nation, one poll was mooted by the Election Commission, it was Mrs. Gandhi's government that was in power. Again, nobody called her anti-federal for coming up with the idea of one nation, one poll. The point is that this has been tried before in India. Now, you may or may not agree with the economic rationale of it, the policy rationale of it, but to say that it is anti-democratic, anti-federal, then the same can be applied to either Pandit Nehru or to Mrs. Gandhi.
India has changed rapidly over the last 70 years, Zakka. We were maybe only two parties back then when we attained independence, and for the longest time it was the Congress and the Communists, and then came the Jan Sangh, and then you had many more parties. Now you have several parties, many of whom, as I said before, participate very actively in the assembly elections and the local body elections, but are sort of marginal factors in the parliamentary elections. So India today is not the India of the yesteryears. Number one. Number two, Zakka, I just have to say that this is just one nation, one election, one diversion that is being recycled again and again. It's recycled more than steel, frankly, the number of times that this idea and this diversion is being recycled. We all know what's going to happen. The bill will come, it will go straight to a JPC, where it will be debated once the JPC is formed. And I can guarantee you, today, you can't sort of undo what has been done. I agree, for 15 years, you had state and national elections happen at the same time. Show me one state government, even one that belongs to the BJP, that's willing to actually have an election for a truncated term. That would be unprecedented.
It will be.
I don't even know any one chief minister.
No, but
who say that
all BJP ruled states have said
years.
that they are willing to go ahead with one nation, one election.
If that is the case, then I'll have to point to what my SP spokesperson friend said, which is that if they are agreeing to go ahead, then maybe that is the solution, that first they do that. Because if you ask any of the regional parties who are in power, whether that be TMC, whether that be DMK, none of them will be agreed to a truncated term for their election. So I've already made my points on how the economic rationale or the policy rationale is really being overstated. This is a policy measure that really is not going to come to force. You can take it from me in writing.
No, so this again anti-federal argument, Tariq Khan. I mean, how can you say कि ये anti-federal है? No one is stopping Samajwadi Party, for example, from contesting national election today. For example, in the 18th Lok Sabha, you have more MPs from Uttar Pradesh than BJP does. तो nobody said कि मतलब समाजवादी पार्टी तो रीजनल पार्टी है, वो नेशनल इलेक्शन में कैसे उनको इतने सीट आ गए. And nobody is stopping a national party like BJP from contesting for regional elections. तो अगर ये simultaneously हो जाता है, as has been the case in the first 15 years after independence, and numerous elections. I think Karnataka for a long time used to have simultaneous elections. Now Andhra Pradesh and Odisha have simultaneous elections. उसमें कोई बुराई नहीं है. Regional parties can compete in national elections and national parties can compete in regional elections.
You have to show, the BJP or the committee have to show the positive point it has in its content. Means they are not able to convince even, means they have to convince the nation as well. Means suppose 1951 was the first election that it has been a simultaneous election for 15 or 17 years. Now you can realign those things in 2029, but that would get disturbed because majority in the assembly is important. Some state has a midterm poll. Suppose a state has a midterm poll, that alignment would get disturbed in 2035, 2045, 2055. That would get disturbed. Or you have to do some constitutional changes. By doing so, you have to say that the tenure of the assemblies or the would not be 5 years. That would be according to the mood of that assembly that it has been dissolved. Now there will be
tenure of the assembly is fixed. No one is saying that the tenure of the assembly will change. Tenure of the assembly is fixed.
Listen to me. The commission, the law commission in 2018 said that they would require 5 constitutional amendments. Article 83 need to be amended. Article 85 need to be amended. Article 172 need to be amended. Article 174 need to be amended. Article 356 need to be amended. What these articles says, they all talk about the powers, the tenure and all the things of the assembly and the parliament. If you want to amend it, you have majority, you can amend it. But there should be a constructive discussion on on all the things, that what effect it will have.
Okay, final word, Professor Kumar. I have to wrap up after that. The point is, in an economy which is the 5th largest now in the world, fastest growing large economy, I think the BJP at a philosophical level is trying to say that the focus should be on the next 25 years, the focus should be till we get to 2047, Viksit Bharat and so on, that elections are actually time, money, energy, resources consuming, and we can afford to have one in 5 years as opposed to one every 6 months.
I think on this, there should be some concrete data about that, what amount of money would be saved if you hold elections simultaneously. Yes, there's no doubt that this money part, that expenses on election is going to be less. But instead of focusing too much on that, why don't we focus more on the kind of money which is being spent by the candidates and the political parties? If we are able to control that, if we are able to do something about that, we would be able to save a lot of money, resources of the country as well.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. Let's see how this plays out. Thank you very much to all our guests. One Nation, One Poll. We're given to understand the bill will be taken up next week in Parliament, and then subsequently it could likely get referred to a joint parliamentary committee. I want to now shift focus to the other big story, the Atul Subhash suicide case, where a Bengaluru-based techie claimed his own life, and that sparked a major debate around dowry and divorce laws in the country. In his 24-page suicide note, Atul Subhash said that his estranged wife and his in-laws used the IPC section 498A, which deals with dowry, harassment and so on. He claims that that law was misused by his wife and in-laws to blackmail him and to demand 3 crore rupees to withdraw all the cases that were filed against him. Atul Subhash's estranged wife had slapped 9 cases against him, including murder, dowry, harassment, unnatural sex, etc. While the estranged wife's family has denied the allegations, they have now left from their traditional home in Jaunpur in Uttar Pradesh. We don't know where they are. They are being socially ostracized. In fact, she works with a high-end private firm in Bengaluru. She's not shown up for work over the last 3 or 4 days since this case came to light. As the investigation in the case is underway, it's time to ask, is it time to take a long, hard look at divorce and dowry laws in the country? Is Section 498A, which deals with dowry harassment, being misused by some elements in the country?
जो आप पत्रकार करेंगे वो होगा, जो न्यायपालिका करेगी वो होगा, और पत्रकार और न्यायपालिका क्या है वो आप लोग डिसाइड कीजिए।
उसकी यही भावना थी कि और कोई अतुल सुभाष ऐसा नहीं करे, कानून में सुधार हो, ये कानून का जो गलत दुरुपयोग हो रहा है उस पर संशोधन करने की ज़रूरत है।
नहीं, अब बस स्वभाव अच्छा ही था, बहुत अच्छी थी, जो कुछ हुआ उसके साथ गलत हुआ।
All right, we'll be joined in a moment by Deepika Narayan Bharadwaj. She's one of India's foremost men's rights activists. Vandana Shah, lawyer and women's rights activist, is also joining us. Ashutosh Srivastav, senior advocate, is also joining us. Vandana Shah, let me start with you first. So in the specific case of Mr. Atul Subhash, there is a detailed documentation that he has left behind, 81-minute video that he has captured, a 24-page note, which all gives details of what he claims are his experiences of harassment and extortion by his estranged wife and his in-laws. He has accused them of creating a hostile environment which contributed to emotional distress, and that led to his suicide. Now, the point is that his case is not alone. The reason why this case seems to have captured the national imagination is a lot of men who are going through such, very, very harassing divorce cases in courts of law are able to relate with what he went through, and therefore are coming out, and you're seeing this outpouring of support. What is your argument for not wanting to reform the law, or at least put guardrails in this law so that it's not misused, something that even the Supreme Court took note of and has put out an 8-point sort of framework for alimony and such settlement cases?
Zakka, thank you for having me on the show, and I want to start by condoling Atul's death. And I just want to say that, this death was extremely, extremely tragic. But let's also look at another factor which is at play here. Firstly, I'm not against the reform of laws. I do say that we should have better laws, we should have better accountability, we should have better implementation of the laws. I'll explain point-wise what I'm talking about. Section 498A, which is now also known as 85 in the new BNS, it came into play. Let's look at the genesis. It came into play for protecting vulnerable women. It came into play to avoid giving dowry and the extortionate amounts of dowry that were expected to be paid by the woman's family whilst getting married. whilst we are talking about Atul Subhash's case, we seem to have forgotten that there are about 6,500 dowry deaths per year in the country. There are about 13,500 cases which are lodged. 6,500 are dowry deaths. So that means 50% of the cases which are lodged by women, the women are dying either by suicide or they are being burnt. If you may recall the Kerala doctor's case, where she hung herself because of the extortionate dowry demands which were put before her. The to-be husband was also a doctor. He was also told, he said, give me a BMW. They wanted kgs and kgs of gold. So this law which came into place for protecting the vulnerable, and by vulnerable I say, it came for protecting the vulnerable women. It's time to relook at the law, but let's not forget that there have been reforms in this law.
Okay.
No one seems to speak about that. When 498A came in, you could just go in immediately, arrest the husband's family, no questions asked. Now, if you have to arrest the husband's family, you must serve a notice under 41A to arrest the husband or the family. Now you have to give a 48-hour notice to arrest them.
So let me ask
Ashutosh
Srivastava, purely going by NCRB statistics, the number of women who are harassed for dowry, the number of women who are harassed by their in-laws' families far outnumber the number of men who claim harassment. So yes, there may be shortcomings in the law, there may be abuse of certain sections of the law, but that doesn't mean you throw the baby and the bathwater out, Ashutosh. It means that you have to have better guardrails. For example, what the Supreme Court yesterday laid down as the 8 points that need to be met for alimony cases, for example.
Yeah.
But what has happened in Atul Subhash's case is that everybody is coming out and saying that all women are misusing 498.
See, there could be some genuine cases, no doubt. But if you see the conviction rate, where is the conviction rate? The issue is that the Supreme Court, while making such finding, the Supreme Court itself has said that, there has been clear abuse of process of law by majority of such cases being filed. So that cannot be denied. This is the finding by the apex court itself. Now, when
I don't think it said majority of cases. I think the court said there is abuse of the law.
There is abuse of process of law. This is what is the law.
One second. Let Ashutosh finish. And then I'll come back to you.
1 minute. See, when you say that the demands of dowry, etc., as my learned friend just now said, now what is happening in these cases? Suppose if somebody is filing a case under 498A, now 85, or maybe Domestic Violence Act, what is happening? The husband, if he gives 3 crores, 1 crore, 2 crore, the matter is finished. The crime is over. Is it what is expected from these laws? So where is the dowry demand? Now this has become rather a legal way of demanding dowry from the husband side. Now it is not only the husband, even the husband's sister, husband's mother, they are the sufferers.
No, but Mr. Srivastava, one second. One limited point. One second, Mr. Srivastava. One limited point is dowry as a social evil, as a social practice in this country is always asked of the bride's family. It's never asked of the groom's family. So the reason why 498A came into existence was to prevent that practice, that social ill. Right?
I am making a point here that suppose if some woman goes and files a 498A case, she claims that there was a dowry demand. She claims that there was domestic violence. Now, what happens when this matter goes for mediation? There is absolutely a demand of an amount, as it happened in Atul case also. The demand was from 1 crore to 3 crores. Now, suppose if these 3 crores were paid, so that means the crime is over? Everything is all fine?
Okay.
So,
Vandana Shah, respond to that. See, I think there is a case. One second. There is a case to be made for some kind of a pre-investigation by the police or by an expert's body to have some kind of a preliminary investigation before filing dowry harassment cases, so as to prevent any of these frivolous complaints, because ultimately this can be devastating for families, for children most of all, and for the individuals concerned. So why don't we have that kind of a mechanism of having some kind of a preliminary investigation before a 498A case is registered and before, of course, any kind of penal action is taken
so
against
there is a
the
preliminary
accused person?
investigation which is conducted. That is what I was talking about, the Arnesh Kumar judgment. After that, there is a preliminary investigation that is conducted before actually filing this case. I'd like to introduce another point about the responsibility of the police. Who are actually, I've said it in other debates and I've said it a lot of times even in court, that, the police seem to specialize in terrorizing the men whilst they register a case of 498A. What they do on a Friday night, you will get a notice that you will be arrested within 48 hours or you have to be present before the police station. So on Saturday and Sunday, the poor men are running to try and get bail. The police also, when I said the police also have an active role in this, why can't you actually pull up even the corrupt police officers or the officers who are indulging in this kind of behavior and say, all right, you can give a notice on a Monday. He has 48 hours to apply for bail.
Let me ask Deepika Narayan Bharadwaj on this. The case that people are making for gender neutral legislation, current laws, the one section feels tend to favor women when it comes to domestic violence and dowry cases. And this could lead to situations where men are unfairly targeted. So therefore, some legal experts like yourself have been talking about gender neutral legislation. The problem, ma'am, is that, as I said earlier, two things. One, the NCRB crime data is very, very clear that the number of women who either commit suicide or are killed for dowry demands, etc., far outnumber the number of men. This is NCRB data that's been put out there. And two, as a social practice, dowry has almost always been asked of the bride and the bride's family and not of the groom's family. So that's the reason why we have the dowry harassment against dowry prevention section of 498A. So how do you justify then having gender neutral laws when society itself is not neutral towards the woman? It's not an equitous where both men and women are equal. It is fairly stacked up and loaded against women. That's why you have 498A.
Well, Zakka, tell me one thing. The countries that have gender neutral provisions, have we looked at the statistics over there? There are decent number of women who perpetrate domestic violence. There are decent number of women who are perpetrators of spousal murder. There are decent number of women who are perpetrators in sexual abuse cases. We do not have any mechanism as of now in 2024 in a country of 1.4 billion where we can assess how many men are suffering. What are you comparing the data with? Yes, there are women who are suffering, but how do I bring you the data of men who are suffering? Because there are no laws that they can register their complaints under. So it is not a fair comparison, Zakka. If you're talking about how many men are victims of cruelty, 498A can be filed only by a woman only, a married woman only. A married man, even if he is beaten up every day, day in, day out. And let's come to Atul Subhash's case only. According to him, his wife was demanding 50 lakhs from him in order to settle the career of a brother. Now, will you not call this dowry if this was a demand made by a husband to his wife? Could Atul register a case of 498A against his wife? No.
No. One second. I just want to clarify for our viewers. Right? This is an allegation he made. We don't know what the wife's side of the story is.
There are recorded transactions, white transactions of transfer of money from him to her that he has left evidences of. Of course, the investigation agencies are going to basically look into that, Zakka. But I will come to one more point, Zakka. You were saying that, why have no changes been made or anything like that. I would like to tell the audience here, in 2015, after the case of Arnesh Kumar judgment in 2014, after Supreme Court saying so many times that, the families are being harassed in 498A and everything. In Rajesh Sharma judgment, the Supreme Court said, please club these cases, have family welfare committees set up so that serious cases of crime against women versus these frivolous cases of incompatibility or any other reason of marriage breaking down that is converted into a 498A can be differentiated. You know, there can be fairness. And they said paralegal volunteers, wives of retired army officers are going to be a part of this family welfare committee. The women's rights activist appealed that judgment, and then that judgment was scrapped. You know, so you do not want any change to come in the system. You have 498 in 1983, then you have a Domestic Violence Act in 2005, you have 125 CRPC, now you want the marital rape case provision also to come. So the man can just only be a perpetrator and keep on facing one after the other, one after the other, one after. How many cases can a normal human being file?
Deepika, is it your case that 498A cannot then be filed by the police? There has to be some kind of a mechanism where somebody looks at the case and comes to a preliminary judgment or a preliminary understanding that yes, this case merits 498A, otherwise 498A is being misused. Is that, are you saying that there has to be some kind of, you know, a preliminary inquiry mechanism or a board or something that looks into the case before 498A can be applied?
What I'm saying, Zakka, is this man has died a very painful death. He wants justice for himself, just like the country outraged in 2012 for Nirbhaya. The country is outraging right now for justice for men. There needs to be a committee set up as soon as possible. I am not a lawmaker. I am not going to tell you what is going to bring a solution, but we need a solution. And that is very evident with the outpour of emotions and feelings of thousands and lakhs of families of men today. Why isn't the parliament, why not even one member of parliament has spoken anything about this in the parliament?
So let me
no
ask
arrest has been made till now 4 days?
Atul's note does describe a pattern of emotional abuse, of financial extortion. Now, like I said, these are allegations. This is his side of the story. And I want to be clear to our viewers tonight as well, before I go to Vandana, is I don't think any of us here on this panel, certainly any of us here on this channel, sort of endorse suicide as a means of putting your point of view across or bringing attention to your case. I don't think that is the point of this debate at all. And to that extent, I, for one, vociferously and vehemently disagree with the method that Atul Subhash took, eventually, consuming and taking his own life. But I think it's very clear from whatever he has put out, Vandana Shah, that there was a pattern of emotional abuse, there was a pattern of financial extortion. He even has alleged that a particular judge was saying that the matter will be settled if certain money is paid to the court. I mean, my point is, all of this, the reason why this case has suddenly become a lightning rod is because many others are feeling the same way that Atul Subhash felt. Of course, none of them have taken the extreme step that he did, but it has touched a raw nerve amongst a lot of people, Vandana Shah.
Yes, so, I would like to say that there is a certain amount of gender weaponization of laws. I'm not denying that. There's also now POCSO is being used to alienate the men from their children. And I am vehemently opposed to that. But I am also, Deepika mentioned, that there is a lot of abuse that the men are facing. But I also want to put on record that so are the women. You see the percentages. In my mind, the percentage would be about 90 to 10. But just because a few women are misusing the law, it does not mean that this law should not exist. I have a very, very sweet anecdote I'd like to narrate that, if I tomorrow get up and say that, I want to get married to so-and-so man, and I'm educated, I earn a certain amount of money, I have a certain amount of status because of my education, can I go and tell them, you give me dowry for marrying me? That can never ever happen. Till we bring about that socio-legal change where giving the dowry as well as accepting dowry, it should be an immediate punitive judgment in that favor, that anybody who indulges in this, so that later there are no allegations of dowry, there has to be greater accountability, there has to be greater investigation before lodging this complaint. And also, I want to say that there are various other methodologies. One can look at arbitration, you can look at mediation, you can look at, did you know that the PMO's office, you can lodge a complaint like this and they respond to you? Also, we are only restricted to 498A, but I just want to say, if men are facing financial extortion, there are other methods in law where you can go and lodge a complaint. Extortion is a crime.
Okay.
Even if
All right.
it is within the four walls
we'll
of
have
the
to leave it
house,
at that. I'm completely
it
out
is
of time.
a crime.
Like I said, maybe the time has come to take a long, hard look at the abuse, albeit a section of people who might be abusing this particular provision, 498A, in the old IPC and 85 in the current BNS, and whether there needs to be guardrails and mechanisms put in place preventing that abuse, preventing that misuse. That is something that definitely Parliament also needs to consider. But to throw the baby out with the bathwater, I think would be wrong. And I want to reiterate once again, the reason why we are putting this up on the debate tonight here on Brass Tacks is we want to highlight the cases of such abuse. We do not want to in any way come across as endorsing what Atul Subhash did, which is to claim his own life. Quick break. When we come back on the other side, it's a phenomenal development in the world of chess, in fact in the world of sport. 18-year-old Gukesh has ousted the Chinese champion Ding Liren in what is the nail-biting final game, game 14 of the World Chess Championship. Gukesh now becomes the youngest world champion in the history of chess, in the history of the sport. Prime Minister Modi was among leaders who congratulated the chess prodigy. D. Gukesh, in fact, he's got unparalleled talent, he's got unwavering determination, and through the course of this World Championship itself, there were times when it came down to the wire, and he somehow managed to survive by the skin of his teeth until this final game, where he completely surprised Ding Liren. We'll talk about all of that on the other side of this quick break.
खुद को पैम्पर कर।
बच्चा को इंसाफ दिलवा दीजिए, बस और कुछ नहीं चाहिए। तुम्हें छोड़ो, ये बच्चे से नहीं मिल रहे, मेरे बाप रे टॉर्चर किया हम लोग को, वो भी टॉर्चर किया, पर मेरा बच्चा अपने ऊपर सब लेके अपना, मेरा बच्चा सब बर्दाश्त किया, हम लोग को भी नहीं सहने दिया, अपना कष्ट अपने झेलता रहा, अंदर ही अंदर घुट गया, एकदम बर्दाश्त से बाजुल कर दी, मेरा बच्चा एकदम अंदर से टूट गया था रे बाप रे बाप, मेरा बच्चा अंदर से बिल्कुल टूट गया था, इतना टॉर्चर हुआ मेरा बच्चा कि टूट गया एकदम अंदर से।
अभी मीडिया का ही दे रहा है क्या?
बस लाश
कहाँ?
मेरा बच्चा अंदर से बिल्कुल टूट गया।
आपके बेटा आपको कुछ बताए थे क्या हुआ था और हो क्या रहा था सर, क्यों ऐसा डिसीजन लिए है?
हमारा बेटा हमको कहता था कि पापा हम जाते हैं कोर्ट में तो हमारे पास हमको जो है सो पूरा जस्टिस नहीं मिलता है, वहाँ हर आदमी हमको जो है सो कानून व्यवस्था के अंतर्गत कोई काम नहीं होता है, और ये नियम से चलने वाला, कानून से चलने वाला आदमी था, लेकिन ये कभी भी जो है सो वहाँ की कानून व्यवस्था को एकदम मानता था कि एकदम खत्म है।
सर क्या बताए थे सर आपके बेटा, इससे पहले आपकी जो बात हुई थी, कब बात हुई थी और क्या हुआ क्या था?
मार्च के महीना में वो गया था, मार्च के महीना के बाद जब आया ना तो कहा कि पापा वहाँ का जो मीडिएशन का जो जज हैं, चाहे जो भी लोग है, वकील है चाहे जज है, जो भी है, वो वहाँ के कानून व्यवस्था जो लॉ है अपने भारत का, उस लॉ से नहीं चलता है, लोग उस लॉ को मानता ही नहीं है। जो ये बता रहा था कि इस धारा में ये लॉ होना चाहिए, तो वो उसको हाई कोर्ट के, सुप्रीम कोर्ट के लॉ को भी नहीं मानता था।
क्या बोले थे आपके बेटा आपको? उनको हो क्या रहा था?
उनको कुछ नहीं, उनको तो 40 बार बेंगलोर, कम से कम 40 बार गया होगा बेंगलोर से जौनपुर, और मैंने इतनी धारा उस पर, एक खत्म हो जाता था केस तो दूसरा लगा देती थी, इस बात के कारण जो है तो भीतर से फ्रस्ट्रेट था, लेकिन हम लोग को महसूस नहीं होने दिया कि क्या है नहीं है। एकाएक हम लोग को खबर गई है कि वो अपना पूरा मेल वगैरह हमारे छोटे लड़के को रात में किया है 1:30 बजे 2 बजे, हमारे पास 3 बजे उसका फ़ोन आया है। उसके बाद हम लोग कैसे कैसे करके वहाँ से पटना आए हैं, एयरपोर्ट पटना से बेंगलोर पहुँचे 4 बजे शाम में।
मतलब सर आप जानते हैं कि उनके फैमिली कुछ जो अपने वाइफ के ऊपर और उनके फैमिली के ऊपर जो इल्ज़ाम लगाए हैं सच है वो सारे?
एकदम 100% सच है, 100% सच है। उसमें एक आध इल्ज़ाम छूट गया हो तो भले ही, लेकिन जितना इल्ज़ाम को याद होगा उतना लगाया हो तो एकदम सही है।
मतलब आपके बेटा हेरासमेंट
बहुत हेरासमेंट था उसके साथ। हमारी वाइफ 4 महीना रही है, इसको डायबिटीज नहीं थी। वहाँ के टेंशन को देख के वो देखती थी, वहाँ की जो स्थिति है उसको देख करके इसको डायबिटीज हो गई।
मतलब आपके बेटे के अतुल के साथ रहती थी?
हाँ, नहीं गई थी, उसको प्रेग्नेंट थी तो हमारी वाइफ को हमने भेजा था। अकेले हम रहते थे वहाँ बिहार में, इसको भेजा था कि वहाँ पर मदद करना है बहू की। वहाँ का जो देखती थी ना, उसका जो आचार विचार, इसको देख करके थोड़ा सा इसको भी बहुत टेंशन होता था, लेकिन ये बोलती नहीं थी। हमारे लड़कों को अब कितना टेंशन होता होगा हम नहीं बता सकते हैं।
8 months after separation, they filed a divorce case against him, and lot of charges against him were charged in different acts and different acts and different sections. Even not only on my brother, even on me, even on my old parents, all of them all of them were charged against the
the time I started playing chess, like 6.5, 7, I've been dreaming about this, about living this moment for like more than 10 years, and I mean, every chess player wants to experience this moment, and very few get the chance, and to be one of them is yeah, I mean, it can only yeah, I mean, I think the only way to explain is that I'm just living my dream. So I'd like to thank God first of all, because I mean, this whole journey, starting from qualifying to the candidates, and then coming till here, it could only be possible by God. I mean, there were so many miracles. So yeah, firstly thankful to God, and I'm really thankful to all the people who have been by my side in this journey. I mean, yeah, I mean, I'd like to thank each and every one of them, but probably I will have to prepare my speech first, because the kind of emotion that I'm feeling right now, I'll say something stupid. So so I'll prepare something nice and then thank everyone. Being here, representing my country in any tournament, but especially this being, such a high level event, and for the 11 years back, Vishay sir.
I will continue to play, and I hope I can show the strength like this time.
He has made it to the final. He was playing extremely well, and he had an impressive performance in the match. But still, there was that little bit of drama at the end where suddenly Ding blundered, and what was looking like a very likely tie-break, he clinched the title today itself. So that's a very, very pleasant surprise, and honestly, just a huge historic achievement.
The other thing is, Vishy, between move number 30 and thereafter this entire trading of the rook and the queen happened, and between up to 55, there was also this time trouble. Do you believe the ability to hold your nerve actually helped Gukesh a lot?
Yes, I think he managed to stay in control. Also, he held his nerve when things were not going well in the match, and then when they were going well, I mean, he managed to stay composed and calm, and that's probably a huge part of the explanation.
This time trouble, how much of a factor is it? Because Gukesh had nearly more than 60 minutes, if I remember correctly, and Ding was racing against time. He had just 10 minutes on the clock towards the end.
It's part of it, but I think the problem today was Ding's attitude. I mean, he was trying too hard to make a draw, and certainly he was going about it well, but always it produces a mistake when you want something like that, and I think that was his key mistake.
So you think rather than going for the win, he was trying to play for the draw, and that's where perhaps the defensive approach came to the fore? Is that what you're trying to say? How is Gukesh different? Because playing with black, usually they say, is disadvantages. And that too, game 14, both tied at 6.5 points each after 13 games.
I don't think the black or white makes a big difference at this level right now. But
Green Lamb Laminates presents CNN News 18 Primetime Studio.
Viewers, we are live from the CNN News 18 Primetime Studio, presented by Green Lamb Laminates. Viewers, let me not mince words. There are huge, and there were huge expectations from the Supreme Court today. It was hoped that the Supreme Court would pronounce an order on the merit in the various petitions filed almost 4 years ago, calling upon it to strike down the allegedly communal Places of Worship Act 1991, a law passed by the Congress government of Narasimha Rao in that year. But as it turned out, the Supreme Court did not hear even one Hindu petitioner today. It didn't wait to find out why Hindus were feeling aggrieved by a law they believed robs them of the right to approach court, a basic right under the Constitution to peacefully and lawfully reclaim places of worship that were wrested from